All right. This one is called Giada. A few years back, when I first started doing the open mic storytelling here with Jim May, I volunteered to put together the promotional flyer, and Jim thought that the first-timers could use some encouragement, so he gave me a list of suggested topics to put on there, and I noticed the first one right at the top of the list was Encounter with an Angel. And I didn't say anything, but I'm a fairly cynical person by nature. And I was thinking, oh, God, do we really want to encourage people to just come up here and share their delusions? It's not like stuff like that really happens. Well, subsequent events in my life have caused me to rethink my position on this topic. And this isn't meant to be a depressing story, but it starts out kind of dark because the spring of 2022 was a fairly dark period for me. At the beginning of May 2022, I had some follow-up repair surgery on my aorta, and even though the operation was successful, it left me completely wiped out physically, just drained. And at the time, I was living with and taking care of my 98-year-old mother, which I was happy to do, but now even the simplest of tasks, like making dinner or taking out the garbage, would exhaust me, and I had to keep sitting down to take breaks. Still, I was well aware how fortunate I was to have my mother in my life at that stage of the game. I know maternal relationships can be kind of an emotional minefield, but my mom was a really cool person, and we got along pretty well. Not many people can get me to sit through an entire episode of Murder, She Wrote, but she could. And by virtue of spending so much time with her, she'd become more than my mother. She was my little buddy. And at 98 years of age, with her eyesight failing and her hearing starting to go, her sense of humor was perfectly intact, and she thought I was funny. So I looked forward to making her laugh every day. Well, a couple of weeks after my surgery, my little buddy died. So now I was physically and emotionally just spent. There was nothing left in the tank. And you know how they say that everyone grieves differently? Well, the way I chose to grieve was to sit in a lawn chair out in the driveway and wait for the passage of time to make life seem normal again. I don't recommend that. I'm sure it would have been much more beneficial to go for long walks and get my endorphins going, but at the time, going out to the driveway was a long walk for me. It was about all I could do, so it was about all I did. And we live in a very quiet neighborhood, so it's not like I was being constantly barraged by visitors and well-wishers. Most of the time, it was just me and my lawn chair and my grief. The one person I did keep seeing on a regular basis was a little girl who lived a few houses down, and she would ride her little pink bicycle back and forth, clearly on a very limited routing pattern. And I would occasionally attempt a half-hearted smile and a wave, and she would just turn her head like, oh my God, don't look at him, don't look at the creepy guy, oh my God. And I get that. If I had a little girl, I wouldn't want her talking to some weirdo sitting out in his driveway. But one day, I was rolling the garbage can out to the curb, and she did stop to talk to me. She wanted to know if it was okay if she rode her bike into my driveway, because she's only allowed to go halfway down the block, and I guess this would increase her territory. I said, yeah, I don't care. Ride in the lawn if you want. Knock yourself out. Well, that was all it took. I don't know much about little girls, but apparently once they determine you're okay to talk to, then the floodgates open. Because I went and sat back down in my lawn chair, and a couple minutes later, she rolled up again and started talking. And among other things, she told me her name is Giada. She's 8 years old. She's in second grade. Next year, she's going to be in third grade. But everybody in her class can run faster than she can. She's got a little brother named Luca. He's only 1 year old, and she loves him so much. She has a German Shepherd named Atticus and 3 cats named Rocky, Frank, and Figaro. And her grandpa only has 1 kidney. And I said, I didn't know what to say. It was like I'd been sitting in a dark room and somebody broke a window and all this sunlight and fresh air came pouring in, and I wasn't sure how to respond. Fortunately, I didn't have to think about it very long, because then off she went again. And in those first few days of visiting me, that was kind of her pattern. She would roll up, drop about 20 minutes worth of information on me in 2 minutes, and while I was trying to process it, off she'd go again. It was like short attention span theater, and it was kind of perfectly suited for my capabilities at the time. I think it was on about her third or fourth day of visiting me. She was giving me the lowdown on all the gossip you can pick up riding your bike halfway down the block. And she was saying, yeah, I heard a lot of yelling coming from that house over there. That's Frank. He's my dad's favorite neighbor. You know, like you're my favorite neighbor and blah, blah, blah. And she kept going, but my mind froze. I was like, did this kid just say I'm her favorite neighbor? How the hell did that happen? I'm just sitting here minding my own business and now I'm in a committed relationship? I wanted to interrupt her and ask, what kind of responsibilities come with this whole favorite neighbor thing? Because I wasn't sure I was up to it, but I was willing to give it a shot because I had absolutely nothing else going on at the time. But before I could ask her anything, off she went again. And it started to dawn on me, I think most of my responsibilities are going to be just listening. And that's good. I could do that. In the days that followed, Giada's visits became more frequent and of longer duration, although sometimes she would stay on her bike and ride in circles around me while we talked. Other times she would get off of her bike if she had to pick a dandelion or dig for bugs. She was fascinated by bugs and seemed to know a lot about them, although I suspected some of her facts may have been embellished. I didn't say that because I didn't want to jeopardize the whole favorite neighbor thing. One day she rolled up and announced she knew how to do a cartwheel. And I said, oh, that's cool. But then she had to get off of her bike and show me. On the driveway, the cement driveway. I remember looking around thinking, if this child gets injured and I'm the only one around, I'm going to jail for a long, long time. Fortunately, we both survived the cartwheel incident. Another time she rolled up and asked me if I'd like to hear her sing her favorite song. I said, yeah, sure. Well, it turns out her favorite song is the entire soundtrack from the Disney movie Encanto. So 20 minutes later, she's showing no signs of slowing down, and I'm just like, whoa. And she was doing all the parts complete with choreography. It was really cool, really impressive. But it was kind of a bittersweet moment because part of me was thinking, she really should be doing this with other little 8-year-olds who can sing along with her and match her energy level. But we just don't have a lot of kids in this neighborhood. So she's stuck with the old guy who sits in his driveway. And part of me was really happy about that. It wasn't lost on me, the fact that these visits were having an effect. It wasn't any conventional form of therapy, but there was definitely a healing process going on. And it was nothing I ever would have asked for, but it was exactly what I needed. One day, she was digging around for bugs, and she found this dead bee who had deposited his stinger somewhere, so his entire rear end was missing. And she came up with this story about how he had been to the sushi bar and eaten so much sushi that he just blew his butt off. And I found myself laughing for the first time in a long time because apparently 8-year-old humor is right in my wheelhouse. But it wasn't like a switch had been flipped and I was suddenly in a good mood. It was more this gradual, grudging acceptance that life does indeed go on. And not only that, some people are just getting started on it and really enjoying it. And maybe I could still be a part of that too. As the summer months wound down, Giada's visits became less frequent, and when school started up again, I hardly saw her at all. So when I finally got packed up and moved away in September, there were no tearful goodbyes or promises to stay in touch, which was just as well. I think it would have been inappropriate to try and explain to an 8-year-old the impact she had had on my life. As far as she knew, she was just a kid being a kid. But I will never forget how she just suddenly appeared right when I needed her and kind of dragged me out of the darkness and into the light. So these days, when people say that angels walk among us, I tend to believe them because I think I met one. Thank you.